How are you guys doing? Today is Monday, April 12th, 2021, out here in this quarantine. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to review the Elite matchups and performances from yesterday, Sunday, April 11th. And of course, I'm going to preview everything that goes on today as we navigate through the world of sports one day at a time. I think the biggest news yesterday came from the fourth days of the Masters in Augusta, where Hideki Matsuyama of Japan was able to win his first green jacket after winning the Masters for the very first time in his life. And it was a crazy come from behind victory. He wasn't even in the leaderboard after day one, but he came back and was able to pull off one of the biggest sports feats that anyone ever can accomplish. So of course, congratulations to Hideki Matsuyama. And with that said, looking into what's going on in the NBA, because of course the NFL is no longer in season, looking at the games that of course were on prime time yesterday, and starting in Denver, because of course that's where a game was played. The Denver Nuggets hosted the Boston Celtics, and were able to, in this matchup, the Boston Celtics would beat the Denver Nuggets 105-87. The big difference would come in the fourth quarter, where the Celtics outscored the Nuggets 31-8 by 23 points to win the game by 18 to come from behind and pull off their 28th win of the season. For the Denver Nuggets, their leading scorer would be their starting small forward out of Missouri, Michael Porter Jr., who finished with 22 points and 11 rebounds in 35 minutes, shooting 9 for 23 from the field and a perfect 3 for 3 from the line. Alongside him in the starting lineup, their elite starting center, Nikola Jokic, would finish with 17 points, 10 rebounds, and 11 assists in 32 minutes, as he shot 6 for 15 from the field and 5 for 7 from the foul line. For the Boston Celtics in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their elite starting small forward out of Duke, Jason Tatum, who would lead the game in scoring as he finished with 28 points, 10 rebounds, and 2 assists in 33 minutes, shooting 9 for 23 from the field, 2 for 7 from 3, and a perfect 8 for 8 from the line. Their all-star shooting guard, Jaylen Brown, would finish with 20 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists, and 2 blocks in 36 minutes as he shot 8 for 15 from the field, 2 for 7 from 3, and 2 for 3 from the foul line. And their elite starting point guard Kemba Walker would finish with 14 points, 5 rebounds, and 6 assists in 33 minutes as Walker shot 6 for 15 from the field and a perfect 2 for 2 from the foul line. With this win, the Boston Celtics are now 28-26. That is the 7th best record in the Eastern Conference. If they have now won their last 3 games, they've now won 7 of their last 10. In the Eastern Conference playoff picture, they've won one more game and lost one more game than the Charlotte Hornets. So they sit below them in the standings, but they sit pretty much tied in the playoff race. Both the Celtics alongside the Hornets are sitting half a game behind the 5th place Miami Heat, the defending champs in the Eastern Conference playoff picture. And they also sit 1 game ahead of the 8th place New York Knicks as they currently trail the Philadelphia 76ers and the Brooklyn Nets by 8.5 games in the East. And with this loss, the Denver Nuggets are now 34-19. That is the 4th best record in the Western Conference. Even though with this loss, they've still won 8 of their last 10 games. It actually snapped the longest winning streak in basketball at the moment. Now the longest winning streak belongs to the Clippers. And right now, looking in the Western Conference playoff picture, the Nuggets sit 2 games behind the 3rd place Los Angeles Clippers, 1 game ahead of the 5th place defending champs Los Angeles Lakers, and they sit 6 games behind the 1st place Utah Jazz in the entire conference. Looking out to one of the other big games from last night, jumping out to Portland, the Portland Trailblazers hosted the Miami Heat, the defending Eastern Conference champs, and in this one, the Heat would beat the Blazers 107-98. They outscored Portland by 14 in the second and 10 in the third. Those would be the quarters that really made the difference here. For Portland in this matchup, one of their leading scorers would be their starting small forward that they recently got from Toronto, Norman Powell, who finished with 17 points and 2 steals in 33 minutes, shooting 7 for 13 from the field and 5 for 6 from the foul line. And then alongside him, he's already just 7 for 13 from the field, 1 for 4 from 3, and a perfect 2 for 2 from the foul line. Alongside him, scoring 17 points and tying for the team high for the Trailblazers would be their starting shooting guard, CJ McCollum, who finished with 17 points and 6 rebounds in 36 minutes, shooting 7 for 18 from the field. And then their elite starting point guard, Damian Lillard, would finish with 12 points and 3 assists alongside 5 turnovers in 37 minutes, as he shot 3 for 10 from the field, 3 for 8 from 3, and 3 for 4 from the foul line. For the Miami Heat in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their elite starting center, Bam Adebayo, out of Kentucky, who finished with 22 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, and 2 steals in 35 minutes, as he shot 9 for 14 from the field and 4 for 8 from the foul line. Their elite starting small forward, Jimmy Butler, would finish with 20 points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists, 4 steals, and 2 blocks in 36 minutes, as he shot 7 for 13 from the field, 1 for 2 from 3, and 5 for 6 from the foul line. With this win, the Miami Heat are now 28-25. That is the 5th best record in the Eastern Conference, as they have now won their last 2 games and 6 of their last 10. In the Eastern Conference playoff picture, the reigning Eastern Conference champs are currently trailing the 4th place Atlanta Hawks by half a game, and they currently sit half a game ahead of the 6th place Charlotte Hornets and the 7th place Boston Celtics, as they currently trail the Philadelphia 76ers and the Brooklyn Nets by 8 games in the Eastern Conference. With this loss, the Portland Trailblazers are now 31-22. That is the 6th best record in the Western Conference. With this loss, they've still won 6 of their last 10 games. In the Western Conference playoff picture, they currently sit 2 games behind the 5th place defending NBA champions Los Angeles Lakers, and they currently sit a game and a half ahead of the 7th place Dallas Mavericks, as they currently trail the Utah Jazz by 9 total games in the conference. With this loss, Portland was the team that lost. Looking back at the games that I didn't mention, jumping out to Cleveland, the Cleveland Cavaliers hosted the New Orleans Pelicans, and the Pelicans were able to pull off a 116-109 win. The difference would come in the fourth quarter, where they came in trailing by 4, but they would outscore Cleveland by 11 to pick up this 7-point win. Big win for the Pelicans as they picked up their 24th on the season. For the Cleveland Cavaliers, their leading scorer would be their starting power forward, Dean Wade, who finished with 21 points, 6 rebounds, and 3 steals in 32 minutes, as he shot 8 for 12 from the field and 5 for 8 for 3 on the night. And for the New Orleans Pelicans, their leading scorer would be their elite power forward out of Duke, Zion Williamson, who finished with 38 points, 9 rebounds, 4 assists, and 2 blocks in 36 minutes, as he shot 16 for 22 from the field and 6 for 8 from the foul line, and he didn't even attempt a single 3 all night. Alongside him in the starting lineup, their elite small forward out of Duke, Brandon Ingram, would finish with 27 points, 4 rebounds, 8 assists, and 5 turnovers in 36 minutes, as Ingram shot 8 for 18 from the field, 3 for 6 from 3, and a perfect 8 for 8 from the foul line. With this win, the New Orleans Pelicans are now 24-29. That is the 5th worst record in the Western Conference, even though they've won their last 2 games. They've won 5 of their last 10. They currently sit 3 games behind the 8th place Memphis Grizzlies outside of the Western Conference playoff picture, as they currently trail the Utah Jazz by 16 games in the conference. With this loss, the Cleveland Cavaliers are they're 19-34. That is the 3rd worst record in the Eastern Conference. They've now lost their last 2 games in 7 of their last 10 games. They currently sit 8.5 games behind the 8th place New York Knicks outside of the playoff picture, and they currently sit 17 total games behind the Philadelphia 76ers and the Brooklyn Nets, who are currently sitting at the top of the Eastern Conference. Jumping out to Orlando, the Orlando Magic hosted the Milwaukee Bucks, and in this one, the Bucks would beat the Magic 124-87. They outscored Orlando by, 19 points in the first half. They even outscored them by 19 in the fourth quarter to get the desired result. For the Orlando Magic in this matchup, their leading scorer would come off the bench, as their center Mo Bamba would finish with 21 points and 5 rebounds in 21 minutes, shooting 8 for 11 from the field, 5 for 6 from 3, and 5 for 6 for 3 on the night. And then for the Milwaukee Bucks, their leading scorer would be their starting small forward, Chris Middleton, as he finished with 21 points, 8 rebounds, and 5 assists in 29 minutes, shooting 8 for 13 from the field, 2 for 4 from 3, and 3 for 4 from the foul line. With this win, the Milwaukee Bucks are now 33-20. That is the third best record in the Eastern Conference. With this win, they've only won 4 of their last 10 games. In the Eastern Conference playoff picture, they now sit 3 games behind the first place Philadelphia 76ers and the Brooklyn Nets. Both teams have the same record, so they're sitting in third. And they currently sit 4.5 games ahead of the fourth place Atlanta Hawks. Just to show where the Milwaukee Bucks are in the conference. And with this loss, the Orlando Magic are now 17-36. That is the second worst record in the Eastern Conference. They have currently lost 5 games, which is the worst losing streak in the Eastern Conference. One of the worst in the NBA, of course. They currently sit 9.5 games behind the 8th place New York Knicks outside of the Eastern Conference playoff picture. And they currently trail the first place Philadelphia 76ers and Brooklyn Nets by 19 games in the Eastern Conference. Jumping out to Madison Square Garden, talking about the team that's sitting in 8th place. They hosted the Toronto Raptors and were able to pull off a 102-96 win. They outscored the Raptors by 11 in the first quarter, 14 in the first half, and carried that momentum through the end of the game, basically. For the Toronto Raptors, their leading scorer would be their starting shooting guard out of Duke, Gary Trent Jr., who finished with 23 points in 35 minutes, shooting 9 for 17 from the field and a perfect 2 for 2 from the foul line. Their elite starting point guard Kyle Lowry would finish with 19 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists, 3 steals, and 5 turnovers in 37 minutes as he shot 5 for 10 from the field, 2 for 7 from 3, and 7 for 8 from the foul line. And their elite starting power forward Pascal Siakam would finish with 16 points, 7 assists, 2 blocks, 5 turnovers, and 6 fouls in 36 minutes as the fouled out Siakam would shoot 5 for 18 from the field, 1 for 5 from 3, and a perfect 5 for 5 from the line. For the New York Knicks, their leading scorer would be their all-star starting power forward, Julius Randle, who led the game in scoring. He finished with 26 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists, and 5 turnovers in 38 minutes, as he went on to shoot 7 for 19 from the field, 1 for 8 from 3, and a perfect 11 for 11 from the foul line. With this win, the New York Knicks are now 27-27, holding on to the 8th best record in the Eastern Conference. They've now won their last 2 games and 5 of their last 10. In the Eastern Conference playoff picture, they currently sit 1 game behind the 7th place Boston Celtics, as they're just staying in, and they currently sit 1 game ahead of the 9th place Indiana Pacers, who are on the outside looking in. Both teams have 27 losses, but the Knicks have 2 more wins, which is why they're 2 games ahead, which is why they're 1 full game ahead. And then overall in the conference, they sit 9.5 games behind the Philadelphia 76ers and the Brooklyn Nets in the Eastern Conference. With this loss, the Toronto Raptors, I guess now the Tampa Bay Raptors, are currently 21-33. That is the 5th worst record in the Eastern Conference. They've now lost 7 of their last 10, including this one. They currently sit 6 games behind the 8th place New York Knicks outside of the Eastern Conference playoff picture, and they now currently trail the Philadelphia 76ers and the Brooklyn Nets by 15.5 games in the Eastern Conference. Jumping out, of course, to Charlotte, the Charlotte Hornets hosted the Atlanta Hawks in what could possibly be a potential 4-5 matchup in the Eastern Conference. In this one, the Atlanta Hawks would beat the Hornets 105-101. They would outscore Charlotte by 13 in the first quarter and virtually carry that momentum through the end of the game. And they would come into the fourth quarter trailing by 2 to come from behind and pick up their 29th win of the season. For the Charlotte Hornets, their leading scorer would be their starting small forward out of Michigan State, Miles Bridges, who finished with 23 points and 7 rebounds in 41 minutes, shooting 9 for 17 from the field and 2 for 3 from the foul line. For the Atlanta Hawks, their leading scorer would be their starting shooting guard, Bogdan Bogdanovic, who finished with 32 points and 2 steals in 41 minutes as he shot 9 for 22 from the field, 8 for 16 from 3, and 6 for 7 from the foul line. And then their starting center, Clint Capella, would finish with 20 points and 15 rebounds in 35 minutes, shooting 8 for 12 from the field and 4 for 6 from the foul line. And before I get to the standings, I must mention that Miles Bridges might have pulled off one of the greatest dunks yesterday as he dunked on Clint Capella. But regardless, with this win, the Atlanta Hawks are now 29-25. That is the fourth best record in the Eastern Conference. They've now won their last 2 games. They've now won 7 of their last 10. In the Eastern Conference playoff picture, they now sit 4.5 games behind the third place Milwaukee Bucks, and they sit half a game ahead of the fifth place defending Eastern Conference champs Miami Heat at the very moment. And with this loss, the Charlotte Hornets are now 27-25, as they now currently hold the 6th best record in the Eastern Conference. With this loss, they've still won 6 of their last 10 games. In the Eastern Conference playoff picture, they have 1 less win and 1 less loss, so they're sitting about even with the Boston Celtics. They currently sit half a game behind the 5th place defending champs Miami Heat out east, and they and the Celtics sit a full game ahead of the 8th place New York Knicks, who are sitting with the 8th spot in the East. And they currently are trailing the Philadelphia 76ers and the Brooklyn Nets by 8.5 games in the Eastern Conference. Jumping out to Dallas, the Dallas Mavericks hosted the San Antonio Spurs for an in-Texas matchup, and in this one, the Spurs would pull away with a 119-117 win, as they came into the fourth quarter trailing by 1, and they came away with their 25th win of the season. For the Dallas Mavericks, their leading scorer would be their starting center, Kristaps Porzingis, who finished with 31 points, 15 rebounds and 2 blocks, as well as fouling out in 36 minutes as he shot 12 for 21 from the field. He shot 3 for 8 from 3 and a perfect 4 for 4 from the line. Their elite starting point guard, Luka Doncic, would finish with 29 points, 3 rebounds, 7 assists, and 5 turnovers in 35 minutes, as Luka Magic shot 10 for 17 from the field, 2 for 8 from 3, and 7 for 8 from the foul line. For the San Antonio Spurs in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their starting point guard DeJounte Murray, who finished with 25 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, and 4 steals in 33 minutes, as he shot 11 for 17 from the field, 2 for 4 from 3, and he made his only free throw of the night. And the leading scorer for the San Antonio Spurs would be their starting small forward, DeMar DeRozan, out of USC, who finished with 33 points, 5 rebounds, and 8 assists in 35 minutes, shooting 13 for 25 from the field, all of his made field goals inside the three-point line, and he would shoot 7 for 8 from the foul line. With this win, the San Antonio Spurs are now 25-26. That is the 9th best record in the Western Conference. With this win, they've won 3 of their last 10 games. They currently sit 1 game behind the 8th place Memphis Grizzlies outside of the playoff picture looking in, and they currently trail the first place Utah Jazz by 14 games in the Western Conference. With this loss, the Dallas Mavericks are now 29-23. That is the 7th best record in the Western Conference. They've won 6 of their last 10 despite this loss. In the Western Conference playoff picture, they now trail the 6th place Portland Trailblazers by 1.5 games, and they now sit 2.5 games ahead of the 8th place Memphis Grizzlies at the moment, as they currently trail the Utah Jazz by 10.5 games in the conference. Jumping out to Memphis, speaking of the Grizzlies hosted the Indiana Pacers, and the Pacers were able to pull off a 132-125 win after they outscored Memphis by 14 and proceeded to get outscored in every other quarter, but it simply wouldn't be enough. For the Grizzlies in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their starting center, Jonas Valanciunas, who finished with 34 points and 22 rebounds alongside 2 blocks in 32 minutes, as he shot as Valanciunas would shoot 16 for 25 from the field and a perfect 2 for 2 from the line. And then their elite starting point guard, Ja Morant, would finish with 23 points, 2 rebounds, 6 assists, and 2 steals in 35 minutes, as he shot 8 for 15 from the field and 7 for 11 from the foul line. For the Indiana Pacers in this matchup, their leading scorer and who would also tie for the highest point total of the night would be their starting shooting guard out of Michigan, Karis LeVert, who finished with 34 points, 5 rebounds, and 3 blocks in 35 minutes, shooting 14 for 20 from the field and a perfect 4 for 4 from the line. And their starting point guard, Malcolm Brogdon, would finish with 29 points, 9 rebounds, and 11 assists in 39 minutes, as he shot 10 for 21 from the field, 5 for 9 from 3, and 4 for 6 from the foul line. Additionally, for the Pacers, their all-star power forward Domantas Sabonis would finish with 18 points, 15 rebounds, 9 assists, and of course 5 fouls in 30 minutes, as Sabonis shot 7 for 13 from the field, 1 for 4 from 3, and a perfect 3 for 3 from the line. With this win, the Indiana Pacers are now 25-27. That is the 9th best record in the Eastern Conference. They've now won their last 3 games and 6 of their last 10. They currently sit 1 game outside of the playoff picture behind the 8th place New York Knicks, and they currently trail the Philadelphia 76ers and the Brooklyn Nets by 10.5 games in the Eastern Conference. With this loss, the Memphis Grizzlies are 26-25. That is the 8th best record in the Western Conference. They've now they've lost their last 2 games. But they still won 5 of their last 10. In the Western Conference playoff picture, they sit 2.5 games behind the 7th place Dallas Mavericks, and they currently sit 1 game ahead of the 9th place San Antonio Spurs, who are just on the outside looking in. So that's what that game's looking like. Jumping out to Minneapolis, the Minnesota Timberwolves hosted the Chicago Bulls, and in this matchup, the Timberwolves would beat the Bulls 121-117 to pick up their 14th win of the season, the last NBA team to cross that mark. For the Chicago Bulls, their leading scorer would be their all-star shooting guard Zach LaVine, who finished with 30 points, 7 rebounds, and 6 assists in 36 minutes, shooting 13 for 28 from the field and 4 for 12 from 3. Their all-star center, Nikola Vucevic, would finish with 18 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, and 3 blocks in 27 minutes, shooting 7 for 13 from the field, 2 for 3 from 3, and a perfect 2 for 2 from the foul line. And for the Minnesota Timberwolves on the night, their leading scorer would be they had 2 leading scorers. It would be their 2 elite players. Off the bench, their elite point guard, D'Angelo Russell, would finish with 27 points, 2 rebounds, and 4 assists in 26 minutes, shooting 9 for 13 from the field, 3 for 6 from 3, and a perfect 6 for 6 from the foul line. And in the starting lineup, their elite starting center out of Kentucky, Karl Anthony Towns, would finish with 27 points, 12 rebounds, 8 assists, and 2 blocks in 37 minutes, as he shot 8 for 15 from the field, 3 for 7 from 3, and a perfect 8 for 8 from the foul line. With this win, the Minnesota Timberwolves are now 14-40. That is the league's worst record, as they've won 4 of their last 6 games, including this one. They now currently sit 13.5 games behind the 8th place Memphis Grizzlies, outside of the Western Conference playoff picture, and they now sit 26.5 games behind the 1st place Utah Jazz in the conference. With this loss, the Chicago Bulls are now 22-30. That is the 10th best record in the Eastern Conference. With this loss, they've lost their last 2 games, and they've lost 7 of their last 10. They currently sit 4 games behind the 8th place New York Knicks outside of the Eastern Conference playoff picture, as they now trail the Philadelphia 76ers and the Brooklyn Nets by 13.5 games in the conference. And then last but not least, jumping out to the Staples Center, the Los Angeles Clippers hosted the Detroit Pistons, and in this one, the Pistons would head into the 4th quarter. They were leading by 5, but then the Clippers would outscore them by 12 to win by 7 to pick up their 37th win of the season. For the Detroit Pistons, their leading scorer would be their starting shooting guard out of Kansas, Josh Jackson, who finished with 26 points and 2 blocks in 29 minutes, as he shot 10 for 18 from the field and 4 for 5 from the foul line. And their starting small forward, Sadiq Bey, out of Villanova, would finish with 25 points and 4 steals in 31 minutes, as he shot 8 for 12 from the field, 5 for 8 from 3, and a perfect 4 for 4 from the line. For the Los Angeles Clippers, their leading scorer would be their starting small forward, Marcus Morris Sr., who finished with 33 points and 6 rebounds in 36 minutes. He shot 13 for 18 from the field, 6 for 8 from 3, and 1 for 2 from the line. And then their elite starting shooting guard, Paul George, would finish with 32 points, 3 rebounds, 9 assists as well in 37 minutes, as he shot 12 for 25 from the field, 1 for 5 from 3, and a perfect 7 for 7 from the line. With this win, the Los Angeles Clippers are now 37-18. That is the 3rd best record in the Western Conference. They've now won their last 5 games, which is the best winning streak in the Western Conference at the moment. They've now won 8 of their last 10 games. In the Western Conference playoff picture, they now sit a game and a half behind the 2nd place Phoenix Suns. Both teams have 37 wins. The Clippers just have 3 more losses. And the Clippers also sit 2 games ahead of the 4th place Denver Nuggets, just to give a sense of where they are. And they trail the Utah Jazz by 4 total games in the conference, just to give a sense of where the Clippers are. With this loss, the Detroit Pistons are now 16-38. That is the worst record in the Eastern Conference. They've now lost their last 2 games. They've now lost 6 of their last 10. They currently sit 11 games behind the 8th place New York Knicks outside of the Eastern Conference playoff picture, and they currently trail the Philadelphia 76ers and the Brooklyn Nets by 20.5 games in the entire conference. With that said, that's what the NBA is looking like following yesterday's matchups. Looking forward to what's going on today. Of course, it's Monday, so just to start off with the primetime matchups. At 7:30, the Dallas Mavericks, who are currently holding on to the 7th best record in the Western Conference, are going to host the Philadelphia 76ers, one of the teams that's tied for the best record in the Eastern Conference. That game will be on ESPN, as of course Joel Embiid and Luka Doncic are 2 MVP candidates right now. And then following that at 10 o'clock, it'll be 2 more MVP candidates facing off as the Golden State Warriors, led by Steph Curry and currently holding the 10th best record in the West, are going to host the Denver Nuggets, led by Nikola Jokic, who are holding the 4th best record in the conference as well at the moment right now. But outside of the ESPN games, at 7:30, the New York Knicks are going to host the defending champs Los Angeles Lakers. At 8 o'clock, the Orlando Magic are going to host the San Antonio Spurs. The Minnesota Timberwolves, holding the worst record in the league, are going to host the Brooklyn Nets, who are tied for the best record in the East. At 9 o'clock, the Memphis Grizzlies are going to host the Chicago Bulls. And then the New Orleans Pelicans will host the Sacramento Kings, and the Utah Jazz, currently holding the best record in the NBA, will host the Washington Wizards. And following that at 10 o'clock, the Phoenix Suns, holding the 2nd best record in the West, will host the Houston Rockets, as this looks like another opportunity to pick up a win and keep their very high seeding in the West. So that's currently what the NBA is looking like. Staying within the arena, but switching the context to the ice, just to show what was going on within the NHL. And of course, full disclaimer, teams have to stay within their own divisions when they play. Starting off in the East Division, the Philadelphia Flyers hosted the Buffalo Sabres, and in this one, the Sabres would beat the Flyers 5-3 after the Flyers would leave the first period leading 2-0. With their 10th win of the season, the Buffalo Sabres still hold the worst record in the East Division, as they currently trail the Washington Capitals and the New York Islanders by 32 total points in the table. And then jumping out to New Jersey, the New Jersey Devils hosted the Pittsburgh Penguins, as the Penguins were able to beat the Devils 5-2 to pick up their 27th win of the season. With this win, they now sit 2 points behind the Capitals and Islanders from the top of the division. Jumping out to New York, the New York Islanders were able to beat the Rangers in overtime to pick up their 27th win of the season. And with this win, they now sit alongside the Capitals at the very top of the East with 2 points. They're 2 points ahead of the Penguins in the table. And then jumping out to Boston, speaking of the other team that's sitting at the very top, the Capitals were able to beat the Bruins 8-1 to pick up their 27th win. And like I said, they're tied with the Islanders for the very top of the East Division, as they are currently on a 2-game win streak. Jumping out to see what's going on in the Central. The only game that happened in the Central were between the Nashville Predators and the Dallas Stars. And after a game went to shootout, the Predators would pick up their 23rd win of the season. They currently hold the 4th best record in the Central Division. They currently sit 11 points behind the Carolina Hurricanes in the division. And then last but not least, jumping out to the West, the Las Vegas Golden Knights were able to beat the Coyotes 1-0 as they waited all the way to the 3rd period to score the only goal of the game. With their 27th win of the season, the Las Vegas Golden Knights are sitting 2nd in the West Division. They trail the Colorado Avalanche by 4 points at the moment. Speaking of the Avalanche went to Anaheim and were able to beat the Ducks 4-1 as 2 of their goals came in the 3rd period. With this win, they sit on top of the West Division by 6 points over the 2nd place Golden Knights, like I just said. And then jumping out, I guess those were the only 2 matchups out west. So that's what the NHL is looking like following yesterday's matchups. Looking out to what's going on today, starting off with the prime times. At 7 o'clock, the Carolina Hurricanes are going to host the Detroit Red Wings on ESPN+. At the same time and the same network, the Montreal Canadiens will host the Toronto Maple Leafs at 7 o'clock on ESPN+. And outside of those games at 7 o'clock, the Ottawa Senators will host the Winnipeg Jets, and the Columbus Blue Jackets will host the Chicago Blackhawks. At 8 o'clock, the Minnesota Wild will host the St. Louis Blues. At 9 o'clock, the Colorado Avalanche will host the Arizona Coyotes. At 10 o'clock, the Los Angeles Kings will host the Las Vegas Golden Knights, and at 10:30, the San Jose Sharks will host the Anaheim Ducks, and that's currently what hockey is looking like at the moment. Jump in to see what's going on in the MLB, because of course the MLB is still getting started. The teams are just starting to get their season started. Jumping out to Baltimore to get this started, the Baltimore Orioles hosted the Boston Red Sox, and after an onslaught of just runs from both sides, the Red Sox would beat the Orioles 14-19 to pick up their 6th win of the season. For the Baltimore Orioles, the loss would go to their starting pitcher Jorge Lopez, who allowed 7 earned runs in 4 innings pitched as he struck out 4 batters on the day. Their center fielder Cedric Mullins would go 2 for 4 with 2 runs on the day. Their first baseman Trey Mancini would go 1 for 4 with 4 RBIs and a run as he hit his 2nd home run of the season. Their pinch hitter for Santander, Ryan McKenna, would go 2 for 3 with 2 runs on the day. And then their third baseman Michael Franco would go 2 for 4 with 4 RBIs and a run as Michael Franco hit his first home run of the season. For the Boston Red Sox, the win would go to their starting pitcher Nick Pivetta, who allowed 4 earned runs in 6 innings pitched as he struck out 7 batters on the day. Their center fielder Kike Hernandez would go 2 for 5 with an RBI and 2 runs on the day. Their right fielder out of Los Angeles as well, Alex Verdugo, would go 2 for 5 with 3 RBIs and a run. Verdugo would hit his first home run of the season. Their elite designated hitter JD Martinez would go 4 for 6 with 4 RBIs and 4 runs. He hit 3 home runs last night, and he now has 5 on the season. Their third baseman Rafael Devers would go 2 for 5 with 5 RBIs and 2 runs. With 2 home runs, Rafael Devers now has 4 on the season. And then, in addition to him, Xander Bogaerts, their shortstop, will go 3 for 5 with a run. With this win, Nick Pivetta is now 2-0 on the season. With this loss, Jorge Lopez is now 0-2. Overall, with this win, the Boston Red Sox are now 6-3. That is the best record in the American League East, as they now sit 2 games ahead of every other team in the division: the Toronto Blue Jays, the New York Yankees, the Baltimore Orioles, and the Tampa Bay Rays. And with this loss, like I said, the Orioles are among the 4 teams that are tied for last in the AL East, as they now sit 2 games behind the first place Boston Red Sox at the moment. Jumping out to Pittsburgh, the Pittsburgh Pirates hosted the Chicago Cubs, and the Pirates were able to score 5 of their 7 runs in the first 4 innings to pick up their 3rd win of the season. For the Chicago Cubs, their starting pitcher Trevor Williams he wouldn't even make it through the first 4 innings really before he would get subbed out, and it was mostly a bullpen game for them. The only RBI for Chicago would come from their elite shortstop Javier Baez, who finished 1 for 4 with an RBI and a run. He hit his 3rd home run of the season, and their elite third baseman Chris Bryant would go 0 for 3 as he struck out once for himself. For the Pittsburgh Pirates, the win would go to their starting pitcher, JT Brubaker, who would allow only 1 earned run in 5.1 innings pitched. He only allowed 4 hits, too. He struck out 4 batters on the day to pick up his first win. Out of the batters, their left fielder, Brian Reynolds, would go 4 for 5 on the day. Not much more from that. And then their catcher, Jacob Stallings, would end up going 2 for 3 on the day with 2 runs. Colin Moran had an RBI for himself. And then the pitcher, JT Brubaker, would finish 1 for 3 as he finished with 3 RBIs for himself. Big win for him. With this win, Brubaker is now 1-0, and with this loss, Trevor Williams is now 1-1 on the season. With this win, the Pittsburgh Pirates are now 3-6, as they currently hold the worst record in the NL Central. They currently sit 3 games behind the first place Cincinnati Reds at the moment. And with this loss, the Chicago Cubs are now 4-5. That is the 4th best record in the NL Central, as they sit 2 games behind the Cincinnati Reds in the NL Central. Jumping out to the AL Central, the Cleveland Indians hosted the Detroit Tigers, and in this matchup, the Indians would beat the Tigers 5-2. The Tigers scored the first run of the game, but the Indians would gradually score. They would pepper runs throughout the game to pick up a very big win at home. For the Detroit Tigers in this matchup, the loss would go to their starting pitcher, Jose Urena, who would allow 2 earned runs in not even 5 complete innings pitched. He struck out 4 batters. And their catcher, Wilson Ramos, was really the only player that kind of did it all. He hit his 4th home run of the season as he went 1 for 3 with an RBI and a run. And for Cleveland, the win would go to their starting pitcher, Logan Allen, who would allow only one earned run and only allow 2 hits in 5 innings pitched as he struck out 5 on the day. For the Indians, their elite third baseman, Jose Ramirez, would go 0 for 2 as he walked twice and finished with a run. Their left fielder, Eddie Rosario, would end up going 2 for 3 with 2 runs on the day as he walked as well. Their designated hitter, Franmil Reyes, would go 2 for 3 with an RBI and a run. And with this win, Logan Allen is 1-1 as a pitcher. With this loss, Jose Urena is now 0-2 as a starting pitcher. With this win, the Cleveland Indians are now 5-3. That is the best record in the American League Central, as they now sit half a game ahead of the Kansas City Royals and the Minnesota Twins. With this loss, the Detroit Tigers are now 3-6. That is the worst record in the AL Central, as they now sit 2.5 games behind the Cleveland Indians in the division. Jumping out to Tampa, the reigning American League champs hosted the New York Yankees, and the Yankees were able to pull off an 8-4 win in extra innings, thanks to a Rougned Odor single that would give him 1. Gary Sanchez gave him another single to put him up 2, and then a Gio Urshela 2-run single would put the Yankees up by 4, the exact amount of runs they needed to pick up their 4th win of the season. For Tampa Bay, the start would go to Honeywell Jr. as he would only pitch 2 innings, so it was more of a bullpen matchup for Tampa Bay. Their elite right fielder, Randy Arozarena, will go 1 for 5 with 2 RBIs and a run, as Arozarena would hit his 2nd home run of the season in the 3rd inning. And then also their catcher, Mike Zunino, would go 2 for 4 with 2 RBIs and a run, as Zunino hit his 2nd home run of the season. For the New York Yankees in this matchup, the start went to James Montgomery. He allowed 4 earned runs in 5 innings pitched as he struck out 4 batters on the day. Aroldis Chapman would end up picking up the win as he struck out 3 batters. He struck out all 3 of the batters that he faced. Or I guess in the 9th inning when he pitched, when the Yankees, so he got credit for the win in the 10th inning. And then out of their batting lineup, their elite first baseman, DJ LeMahieu, would go 1 for 5. Their elite right fielder, Aaron Judge, would go 0 for 3 as he walked twice, struck out once, and still was able to score. Their elite designated hitter, Giancarlo Stanton, would go 0 for 3 as he walked once and struck out twice. And then their elite shortstop, Gleyber Torres, would go 1 for 4 with an RBI and a run. Alongside him, their third baseman, Gio Urshela, would go 4 for 5 with 3 RBIs and a run as he hit his 1st home run of the season for the Yankees. With this win, the New York Yankees are now 4-5 on the season. They are now tied with the Toronto Blue Jays, the Baltimore Orioles, and the Tampa Bay Rays for the worst record in the American League, as all of these teams currently trail the Boston Red Sox by 2 games in the division, and the Tampa Bay Rays are in the same boat with this loss. Jumping out to Minneapolis, the Minnesota Twins host the Seattle Mariners and were able to pull off an 8-6 win on the road. Big win for Seattle as the Twins scored all 6 of their runs in the first 5 innings before Seattle scored at all. And then in the 6th inning, it would be a home run from Seager and Taylor Trammell to shorten their deficit to 2. And then once they made it to the 9th inning, once they were down by 1, it would be a Kyle Seager home run that put them up in the top of the 9th. A big go-ahead home run to give them a very big win. For the Minnesota Twins, the start will go to their starting pitcher, Matt Shoemaker, who would allow 4 earned runs in 5 innings pitched as he struck out 7 batters on the day. Colomé would actually blow the save for Minnesota. It wasn't his fault. In their starting lineup, their third baseman, Luis Arias, would go 2 for 3 with 2 runs on the day. Their elite designated hitter, Nelson Cruz, would go 1 for 3 with an RBI and 2 runs, as Nelson Cruz is hitting incredibly well, batting .444 for the season. Their center fielder, Byron Buxton, would go 3 for 4 with 4 RBIs and a run, as Buxton hit his 4th home run of the season and his 4th double of the season. So, I mean, he's hitting incredibly well to start the season. For Seattle, the starting pitcher for them would be Chris Flexen, who allowed 5 earned runs in 5 innings pitches. He struck out 5 batters, and it would be Steckenrider winning the game in relief, winning his 1st game of the season. Out of the batters, their second baseman, Ty France, would go 2 for 3 with 2 runs on the day. Their third baseman, Kyle Seager, would end up going 4 for 4 with 4 RBIs and 2 runs as he hit his first 2 home runs of the season yesterday. And of course, he had the big hit of the day, considering. So great day for him. And then their center fielder, Taylor Trammell, will go 2 for 5 with 3 RBIs and a run, as Trammell hit his second home run of the season as well. With this win, the Seattle Mariners are now 5-4. That is the third best record in the American League West, as they now trail the Houston Astros and Los Angeles Angels by a game in the division. And with this loss, the Minnesota Twins are also 5-4. That is the third best that's the third best record in the AL Central, as they have one more win and one more loss than the Kansas City Royals. So alongside the Royals, they are sitting half a game behind the Cleveland Indians in the AL Central at the moment. Jumping out to Chicago, the South Side, the White Sox hosted the Kansas City Royals in a game that went all the way down to the 10th inning, but it would end up being a fielder's choice from Andrew Benintendi once he reached. And it would, of course, bring Michael A. Taylor home to give him the go-ahead run, and they were able to shut the White Sox out at the bottom to give them their 4th win of the season. For the Chicago White Sox, the start would go to Dylan Cease, as he would not even finish his first 5 innings, but he would still strike out 6 batters and only allow 1 earned run on the day. For the White Sox, their elite first baseman, the reigning American League MVP, Jose Abreu, would go 1 for 4 as he walked on the day. Their designated hitter, Yermy Mercedes, would go 0 for 1 as he walked 3 times. And then Adam Eaton, their pinch hitter, would end up going 1 for 2 with 2 RBIs and a run, as Eaton hit his second home run of the season. For Kansas City, the start would go to Mike Minor, who only threw for 4 innings and struck out 3 batters before he only allowed 1. Greg Holland would pick up the win for Kansas City in relief, his first of the season. Out of their batters, their elite second baseman, Whit Merrifield, would go 2 for 4 with an RBI. Their elite catcher, Salvador Perez, would go 0 for 5 as he struck out 3 times. Their first baseman, Carlos Santana, would hit the only home run of the day for the Kansas City Royals, as he went 1 for 4 with an RBI and a run. He hit his first home run of the season. And with this win, the Kansas City Royals are now 4-3. That is the second best record in the American League Central, and alongside the Minnesota Twins, they sit half a game behind the Cleveland Indians in the division. And with this loss, the Chicago White Sox now hold the 4th best record in the American League Central, as they now currently trail the Cleveland Indians by a game and a half in the American League Central. Jumping out to St. Louis, the St. Louis Cardinals hosted the Milwaukee Brewers, and in this game, the Brewers would beat the Cardinals 9-3 after scoring 7 of their 9 in the first 2 innings. For the St. Louis Cardinals in this matchup, the loss would go to their starting pitcher, Daniel Ponce de Leon, as he allowed 7 earned runs in 1.1 innings pitched, as he was unable to strike out a single batter in that stretch. And then for the Cardinals batters, the only player that logged more than 1 hit was their left fielder, Austin Dean, who finished 2 for 4 with 2 RBIs on the day. Their elite first baseman, Paul Goldschmidt, would go 0 for 5. Their elite third baseman, Nolan Arenado, would go 1 for 3 himself, as he was able to walk and make it on base again. For the Milwaukee Brewers in this matchup, their winning pitcher, of course, would be Brett Anderson, as he would allow only 1 earned run in 5 innings pitched, as he struck out 1 batter on the day. With this win, he's now 1-1 on the season. With his loss, Ponce de Leon is 1-1 on the season. And then for the Brewers, their first baseman, Daniel Vogelbach, would end up going 1 for 4 with an RBI and 2 runs for himself. Their elite left fielder, Christian Yelich, would go 1 for 2 with a run. Their right fielder, Avisail Garcia, will go 1 for 5 with 2 RBIs and 2 runs. He was able to hit his second home run of the season. Travis Shaw hit his second home run of the season, as the third baseman went 1 for 2 with 3 RBIs and 2 runs. And then their catcher, Manny Pino, would end up going 3 for 4 with 2 RBIs and a run, as Pino would hit his first home run of the season for the Brewers. With this win, both teams are 5-4. Looking at how with this win, the Brewers are 5-4, and with this loss, the Cardinals are 5-4. They both are tied for the second best record in the NL Central, as they both sit 1 game behind the first place Cincinnati Reds at the moment. Jumping out to Dallas, the Texas Rangers hosted the San Diego Padres, and in this matchup, the Padres would end up beating the Rangers 2-0, as a team they were able to hold the Rangers to 5 total hits. Same with the Rangers, but they were able to hold the Rangers completely scoreless for the entirety of the game. For the Texas Rangers, the start would go to Mike Foltynewicz, who would allow only 1 earned run in 7 innings pitched, as he struck out 3 batters on the day. With this loss, he's now 0-2 on the season. And the only Texas Rangers player who was able to log more than 2 hits for them would be their catcher, Jose Trevino, who would finish 2 for 3 on the day with a walk. For San Diego, Morejon would get the start, but the win would go to Stammen, and the save would go to Mark Melancon, who picked up his 5th of the season, as Melancon would not allow a single hit in the last inning. And then for the Padres lineup, their elite designated hitter, Manny Machado, would go 1 for 4 with an RBI and a run. He hit his 2nd home run of the season in the 9th inning to put them up 2-0. And then the other RBI went to their center fielder, Trent Grisham, who I guess they hit 2 solo home runs. He was 1 for 3 with an RBI and a run, as he hit his 2nd home run of the season. He also walked and struck out today. But still, with this win, the San Diego Padres are 7-3. That is the 2nd best record in the NL West, as they currently trail the MLB reigning champs, Los Angeles Dodgers, by a game in the West. And with this loss, the Texas Rangers are now 3-6. That is the 4th best record in the American League West, as they now trail the Houston Astros and Los Angeles Angels by 3 total games in the division. Jumping out to San Francisco, the San Francisco Giants hosted the Colorado Rockies and were able to pull off a 4-0 win after scoring 2 of their runs in the first inning, holding the Rockies completely scoreless despite the fact that they finished with 8 hits on the day. For Colorado, the loss would go through German Marquez, their starting pitcher, who would allow 3 earned runs in 5.2 innings pitched as he struck out 7 batters. With this loss, German Marquez is 0-1 as a starting pitcher. Their left fielder, Rafael Tapia, would go 2 for 4. Their shortstop, Trevor Story, would go 2 for 3, the only 2 players with more than 1 hit. And their elite right fielder, Charlie Blackmon, would end up going 1 for 4 on the day as he left 6 players on base. For the San Francisco Giants, their start would go to their starting pitcher, Anthony Disclafini, and he would end up with the win as he allowed no earned runs and 6 hits in 6 innings pitched as he struck out 8 batters on the day. And with this win, of course, he's now 1-0 as a starting pitcher. Their left fielder, Alex Dickerson, would go 1 for 4 with an RBI and a run. He hit his 2nd home run of the season. Brandon Belt, their first baseman, went 1 for 2 with an RBI and 2 runs as he hit his first home run of the season. Former American League MVP, Evan Longoria, would go 2 for 4 with 2 RBIs for himself. And, of course, their center field, Lamonte Wade Jr., would go 2 for 3 as he walked once. With this win, the San Francisco Giants are now 6-3 in the National League West, which is the 3rd best record. They currently trail the defending champs Los Angeles Dodgers by a game and a half in the division. And with this loss, the Rockies are now 3-7, sitting at the very bottom of the NL West as they trail the Los Angeles Dodgers by 5 total games. Jumping out to Phoenix, the Arizona Diamondbacks hosted the Cincinnati Reds and were able to pull off a 7-0 win, holding the Reds to only 2 hits as a team. For the Cincinnati Reds, the loss would, of course, go to their starting pitcher, Jose De Leon, who allowed 6 earned runs in 4.1 innings pitched as he struck out 9 batters. He is now 0-1 as a starting pitcher. And then out of their hitters, their elite shortstop, Eugenio Suarez, would finish with 1 of the 2 hits on the day as he went 1 for 4 and he struck out twice. For the Arizona Diamondbacks, the win would go to their starting pitcher, and of course, probably the best performer last night was Luke Weaver, who allowed only 1 hit in 7 innings pitched as he struck out 8 batters. And following him in relief, it would end up being Matt Peacock, who only allowed 1 hit in the 2 innings that he pitched. He also struck out a batter in those 2 innings, but with this win, the Arizona pitchers were able to secure 9 strikeouts and only allow 2 hits in 9 innings pitched. In their batting lineup, their second baseman, Josh Van Meter, sorry if I butchered the name, he went 2 for 2 with an RBI and a run as he finished with 3 walks on the day. Their left fielder, David Peralta, would finish 2 for 4 with 3 RBIs and 2 runs. He hit his first home run of the season. For their third baseman, Eduardo Escobar, would finish 2 for 5 with 2 RBIs and 2 runs on the day. And then their shortstop, Nick Ahmed, would go 2 for 4 for himself. With this win, the Arizona Diamondbacks are now 4-6. That is the 4th best record in the NL West. They currently trail the defending champs by 4 games in the division. And with this loss, the Cincinnati Reds are now 6-3. They still currently hold the best record in the NL Central as they sit a game ahead of the St. Louis Cardinals and the Milwaukee Brewers at the moment. Speaking of the defending champs, Los Angeles Dodgers, they hosted the Washington Nationals and were able to pull off a 3-0 win. Looking out to how the game fared, it was a pretty good pitching performance, but it would end up being Zach McKinstry who ended up doing it all for Los Angeles with a 1-run double in the 2nd and then a 2-run home run in the 7th. For the Nats, in this matchup, the loss and the start will go to their goated starting pitcher, Max Scherzer, who only allowed 1 earned run in the 6 innings that he pitched. He struck out 5. With this loss, he is now 0-1 as a starting pitcher this season. Their shortstop, Trey Turner, would go 3 for 4 on the day as he struck out once. And their third baseman, Starlin Castro, will go 2 for 4 for himself as the Nats were unable to score a run. For the Los Angeles Dodgers, their elite shortstop, Corey Seager, would go 1 for 4. And then their left fielder, Zach McKinstry, would be the one player who finished with more than 1 hit on the team. He finished 2 for 3 with 3 RBIs and a run, and he hit his second home run of the season for the Los Angeles Dodgers, saving them. And of course, speaking of saves, the second save of the season would come to Kenley Jansen, and the win would of course go to their goated starting pitcher Clayton Kershaw, who allowed no earned runs and 5 hits in 6 innings pitched as he struck out 6 batters in that same stretch. With this win, Clayton Kershaw is now 2-1 as a starting pitcher this season. With this win, the Los Angeles Dodgers are now 8-2 on the season. They currently hold the best record in the National League West, and thus far they have the most wins in the National League at the moment. With this loss, and just looking at their division, they said the closest team to them to the Dodgers is the San Diego Padres. And with this loss for the Nationals, they sit at the bottom of the National League East. After winning their very first game against the Braves, they have now lost their last 5. They now sit alongside the Marlins. They sit 3.5 games behind the Philadelphia Phillies at the top of the NL East. And last but not least, jumping to Atlanta, the Atlanta Braves hosted the Philadelphia Phillies in a game that went all the way down to the 9th inning, and it would end up being a sacrifice fly run home by Alec Boehm, beating the throw by Marcell Ozuna to give the Phillies their 7th run to give them their 6th win of the season. For the Atlanta Braves in this matchup, the start will go to Drew Smyly as he allowed 5 earned runs in 5 innings pitched, striking out 3, and the loss would go to Will Smith, their closer. Will Smith is now 0-2 as the closer. I mean, he now has 2 losses attributed to him. For the Atlanta Braves, their elite right fielder, Ronald Acuna Jr., would finish 3 for 4 with 2 RBIs and 2 runs as he hit his 4th home run yesterday. Their elite second baseman, Ozzie Albies, would go 1 for 5 with 2 RBIs and a run as Albies hit his first home run of the day yesterday. Their elite first baseman and reigning National League MVP, Freddie Freeman, would go 1 for 4 with an RBI and a run. After he went on to hit his 4th home run of the season, their elite left fielder, Marcell Ozuna, will go 0 for 4 as he went on to strike out. And then their shortstop, Dansby Swanson, would finish 2 for 4 for the Braves. For the Phillies, the start will go to their starting pitcher, Matt Moore, who allowed 5 earned runs in 5 innings pitched as he struck out 5 batters. And the win will go to their relief pitcher, Alvarado, who pitched in the 8th inning right before the 9th inning. And Alvarado now 2-0 as a relief pitcher. And the lineup for the Phillies, their elite right fielder, Bryce Harper, will go 1 for 4 with an RBI and a run as he had his 2nd home run of the season. Alec Boehm, their third baseman, went 2 for 4 with 2 runs for himself. And then their shortstop, Didi Gregorius, would go 1 for 3 with 4 RBIs and a run as Gregorius hit his 2nd home run of the season. With this win, the Philadelphia Phillies are now 6-3. That is the best record in the National League East as they sit 2 games ahead of the Atlanta Braves and the New York Mets in the division. With this loss, like I said, the Atlanta Braves now hold the 2nd best record in the National League, and alongside the Mets, they sit 2 games behind the Philadelphia Phillies at this very moment. So that is what the MLB is looking like following yesterday's games. Looking forward to today's matchups, of course, starting with the prime time. Because today is Monday, you're not going to see a lot of prime time. But without further ado, at 2:10, the Minnesota Twins are going to host the Boston Red Sox on ESPN+. It'll be J.A. Happ versus Martin Perez. Both pitchers look to get their first win of the season. And that's the only game on prime time. At 6:35, the Pittsburgh Pirates are going to host the San Diego Padres as San Diego Padres elite starting pitcher Yu Darvish looks to get his first win of the season. At 7:05, the Baltimore Orioles look to face off against the Seattle Mariners. Both teams are looking to get great starts this season. In Florida, the Toronto Blue Jays are going to host the New York Yankees. Both teams sitting at 4-5 as Yankees elite starting pitcher Garrett Cole looks to get his second win of the season. At 7:10, the New York Mets are going to host the Philadelphia Phillies at Citi Field. At the same time, the reigning American League champs, Tampa Bay Rays, led by Tyler Glasnow, are going to face the Texas Rangers, who are led by Dane Dunning, who had a pretty good start his last time out. At 7:20, the Atlanta Braves are going to host the Miami Marlins as Huascar Ynoa faces off against Sandy Alcantara. At 7:40, the Milwaukee Brewers are going to host the Chicago Cubs in Milwaukee. At 7:45, the St. Louis Cardinals will host the Washington Nationals as Washington Nationals starting pitcher Steven Strasburg looks to pick up his first win of the season. The Kansas City Royals will host the Los Angeles Angels at 8:10 today. At the same time, the Chicago White Sox will host the Cleveland Indians, led by reigning American League Triple Crown winner and Cy Young winner Shane Bieber. At the same time, the Houston Astros will host the Detroit Tigers as Zach Greinke looks to get his second win and Casey Mize looks to get his first in the major leagues, or at least this season. And then at 9:40, the Arizona Diamondbacks are going to host the Oakland Athletics as Madison Bumgarner looks to get his first start. And at 9:45, the San Francisco Giants are going to host the Cincinnati Reds as Wade Miley looks to get his second win. And then last but not least, leaving the continent just to see what the world is looking like following yesterday's soccer matches. Of course, getting started in the Premier League just to show how these games are currently shaping the table. West Ham United beat Leicester City 3-2 as Jesse Lingard scored two of them. Neither of these teams are just like the big faces, but with this win, West Ham now is sitting in fourth place in the Premier League, knocking Chelsea and Liverpool to fifth and sixth. They currently sit 1 point behind Leicester City in the table. That's how close Champions League contention is. That was a very important win for West Ham. And then Tottenham Hotspur hosted Manchester United, and in this matchup, Man U would end up beating Tottenham Hotspur 3-1. The first goal would be scored by Son Heung-min in the 40th minute to put Tottenham up, and in the second half, after Fred scored in the 57th minute, it would be an Edison Cavani goal in the 79th, and then Mason Greenwood in the 96th to give Manchester United the 3 goals and the 3 points that they needed to get by. They now sit second in the Premier League. They played one less game than Man City, and they have 11 less points in the table, and they also sit 7 points ahead of Leicester City now that Leicester City has lost to West Ham. So this is a very big win for Manchester United. And then Arsenal would face off against Sheffield and win that game 3-0 as Lacazette would score 2 goals himself. With this win, Arsenal now sits 9th in the Premier League as they are right now sitting 2 points behind 8th place Everton at the moment. Currently trailing first place Manchester City by 29 points in the table. Looking out to Italy, Inter Milan hosted Cagliari in a very important matchup, and after only scoring 1 goal in the entire game, Inter Milan will pull out the win, and with this win, they now sit 11 points ahead of second place AC Milan, a team that was leading Serie A coming into the 2021 calendar year, but Inter's done a really good job of pulling away. Juventus was able to beat Genoa 3-1 yesterday as the American Weston McKennie would score the 3rd goal in the 70th minute. With their 3 goals, they were able to get 3 points in the table, and right now they sit 1 point below AC Milan with the same amount of games played. And they currently sit 12 points behind Inter, but they're also really close. They're 1 point ahead of Atalanta, even with this win, because Atalanta was able to beat Fiorentina yesterday. Looking out into La Liga, following the El Clasico matchup where Atletico Madrid had an opportunity to create separation between them and Real Madrid, they were able to draw with Real Betis as they still hold a 1 point lead in La Liga over second place Real Madrid, and they also sit 2 points ahead of Barcelona. But with this win, they still sit at the very top, but the pressure is definitely on Atletico to finish out the season with the best record, considering how much they were ahead by at the beginning of the season. And then last but not least, looking at France and how the top of Ligue 1 is shaping out. The only top team there were 2 top teams that played yesterday. Monaco was able to beat Dijon 3-0, and Olympique Lyonnais was able to beat Angers 3-0 behind Memphis Depay's 2 goals. But looking how it shapes Ligue 1 following these games, AS Monaco now sits third behind PSG. They're now 1 point behind PSG, and Lyonnais is 1 point behind them. So that means they're 2 points behind PSG. Monaco now sits, and then how close they are to PSG. PSG still sits 3 points behind Lille. So the top of France is looking incredibly competitive. And just looking out to what's going on today, there's not much going on in the world of soccer, but that's everything I got for you today for Monday, April 12th, 2020, out here in this quarantine. I'm James Sims, and I want to thank everyone for listening to all 59 minutes, 1 hour of this piece. There's a lot of sports going on, and once all of today's exhibitions are finished, I will come back to you tomorrow, Tuesday, April 13th, 2021. With that said, I want to thank everyone for listening to this episode of The Elite. I'm James Sims, and peace out. I'll catch you tomorrow.